The Kansas and Neosho Valley Railroad was founded in March 1865 and later changed its name to the Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroad. However, by August 1868, it came under the control of a Boston group led by James F. Joy, who served as president of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad system. By October of the same year, the railroad underwent a name change, becoming the Missouri River, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroad. The newly established railroad received a grant of 125,000 acres of land from the state, along with approximately 1,500 acres from private individuals and town companies. Additionally, it obtained subsidies totaling $750,000 in county and city bonds. Because of James F. Joy's involvement, this railroad and the Leavenworth, Lawrence, and Galveston line came to be known as the Joy Roads. In order to finance the expansion of the railroad, Joy purchased the Cherokee Neutral lands, selling about 3 million acres for an average of $6.50 per acre. Following the original goals of the Kansas and Neosho Valley Railroad, the plan was to extend the railway south through Indian Territory, Oklahoma, to reach the Gulf of Mexico. By December 1868, the tracks were laid from Kansas City to Olathe, covering a distance of 21 miles. Subsequently, the railroad reached Fort Scott by December 1869, spanning a distance of 100 miles. The tracks were then extended to Baxter Springs, Kansas, totaling approximately 160 miles. The entire railway became operational on May 2, 1870. Trains competing to cross the Oklahoma state line during this time faced intense competition. One author of Kansas history said that the competition between competing railroads, the Missouri, Kansas, and Texas, and the Missouri River, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroads, for control of the Indian Territory would go down in history as a pivotal moment in the development of railroads. Ultimately, the Missouri River, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroad found itself on the losing end of the construction competition. As the project progressed, the railroad was granted permission to construct a north-south railway through Indian Territory, with the condition that it be the first to reach the Kansas-Oklahoma state line in the Neosho River Valley. However, Baxter Springs, a city on the Spring River, a tributary of the Neosho, made the Missouri River, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroad an offer to expand its route to that city in exchange for a sum of $150,000. Unfortunately, this change in plans cost the railroad the race, allowing the Missouri, Kansas, and Texas Railroad to reach the Oklahoma line first, securing victory in the competition and obtaining the rights to construct its line through Oklahoma and ultimately to the Gulf of Mexico. The construction of the railroad line exceeded $5 million in total expenses. Another reorganization occurred in 1879 when the Missouri River, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroad became the Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroad Company, including a number of branch lines. The railway extended from Fort Scott, Kansas to Springfield, Missouri through leased lines. Concurrently, the Kansas City, Springfield, and Memphis Railroad, a subsidiary of the Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Gulf Railroad, constructed a line from Springfield, Missouri to Memphis, Tennessee, completing it in 1883. The Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Memphis Railroad Company was established in 1888 as a formal agreement that combined this entire network, also referred to as the Memphis Route. The Kansas City, Memphis, and Birmingham Railroad was also under the jurisdiction of the Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Memphis Railroad Company. The Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Memphis Railroad Company was established in 1888 by the merger of three businesses and was granted a charter by the states of Kansas, Missouri, and Arkansas. The St. Louis-San Francisco Railway, Frisco, and the Memphis route fought it out for control of overlapping regions and branch lines. The 1890s saw the fast growth of the Frisco, and 1901 saw the acquisition of a majority share in the Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Memphis Railroad Company by the St. Louis and San Francisco Railroad Company. But complete ownership would not become official until 1928.